Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is the grand finale of An Aelfen Adventure Season 2, my Warhammer Age of Sigmar hobby project. I wasn't quite sure I was going to get this done at some points this year, but we have got to the end of the project, distractions and surgeries and all, and the army of Daughters of Cain and Biden Deepkin on the side is now complete. So today we're going to go through the final units, yes, units plural, that I have added into the army for either faction. And then we're going to have a bit of a showcase segment where we go over everything new that we've added into the army, because there's been a lot that we've added to this project, but you should bear in mind the starting point for this army wasn't from nothing. I came from an army where I had about 500 or 600 points that I was already playing with. I haven't had a chance due to various circumstances to repaint that, so I don't think it's worth showcasing as part of this project, although to be fair it was done in season 1 of An Aelfen Adventure if you do want to go and see it in full. So there will be still plenty of stuff to show off. It's a good about 2,000 points worth of stuff to show off for a year's work, and once we've had a bit of a showcase, we'll have a bit of a talk about the project overall and where we're going next. So this is going to be quite a long episode, I suspect. So without any further ado, let's dive in, get to the first model, and then we'll get into the showcase, and then the final discussion, and we'll wrap up Season 2 of An Aelfen Adventure. Let's go. Alright, so our first unit for today is actually the third unit of Melisai that I've actually worked on as part of this project. I got a box of Melisai for Christmas off one of my friends, and I've been meaning to get round to it, but since I'd done a box of Bloodstalkers and Bloodsisters already, I wasn't really sure what to do with it, so I kind of left it for last. As you can see, I decided that with my third box, my final box for the entire project, I was going to make a second unit, or bulk up the first unit, of Bloodstalkers. Now I know if you're a rules person and you're a power person, you're probably typing in the comments, Tactica, what on earth are you doing, you idiot, they suck. And I know. Point for point, I discussed this when I did Bloodstalkers in a previous episode. They suck compared to Bloodsisters. Obviously, the General's Handbook 2019 is not far away, so there may be a small amount of tweaking to the points values that we're not as yet aware of, but I'm aware they're not as good. However, that is not why I built them as Bloodstalkers. It wasn't to make the army weaker because I was worried it was too powerful. It wasn't because I thought Bloodsisters were too OP to include or anything like that. It was basically aesthetics. It was entirely aesthetics. I just really remember when the Daughters of Cain were revealed, having a huge amount of enjoyment for the Snake Archers, as I called them at the time, because we didn't know what Melisai were, we didn't know about Bloodsisters and Stalkers, I just knew them as Snake Archers. And I really loved the idea of Snake Archers. And aesthetically, I just find the Bloodstalkers so much more pleasing compared to Bloodsisters. I don't know why, I just do. It might be the face, it might be the fact that they're archers, it might be the slightly pared down armor. I don't know. I know the only practical change is in the arms, and I think it probably is in the weapon choice that I just have a thing for archers. Maybe it's just the fact that I've never played a Total War game, I know. I've never played a Total War game, but I really like the Total War games where you have ranks of infantry, you have archer support, and then you have your cavalry. And I've said in previous projects about my rather great fondness for chunky, heavy cavalry. That comes from Total War, from watching people play Total War and from sort of learning a little bit about Total War and all the sort of things that go with military warfare that I've learned. Not a lot, but a bit. I do have a fondness for chunky infantry, archer support, and supermassive chunky heavy cav. It's why I love my Stormcast army. And when I was talking in store to someone from GW, and they were talking about their Stormcast army, which was just lines of infantry with archer support and cav on the wings, I was just like, yeah, I love that. I just love the idea of archers and heavy cav, and I don't know, I just have a fondness for it. So that's why I went with Bloodstalkers. The second option is because I think Bloodstalkers to me, well, actually, no, I've already told you, it's all in aesthetics. But the other thing I wanted to do with this unit of Bloodstalkers was to try and make them distinct from the first unit. I didn't want to change the paint scheme, so you'll notice the paint scheme is entirely unchanged. You've got the pale bluey grey for the under, what's it called, the belly. You've got the dry brushed green for the scales, and then the red sort of main scale running down the back. The pale flesh, the red armor, the white hair with the green wash underneath it. Everything's exactly the same in terms of the paint scheme. But I wanted to make this unit feel at least a little bit distinct. So I made sure that I used as many shouty heads as I could. I tried to vary up the poses that I was using in terms of which head went to which model, at least which face anyway. And you'll notice, probably most predominantly is the first thing you noticed, I converted a new unit champion. Now, for Bloodstalkers, I believe that this model here is the typical unit champion. As I recall, I think this one is the typical unit champion. It's either this one, or I think it might be this one. I think it might be that one, because they've got their bow down, which I think the unit champion of Bloodstalkers, the what they call the crone, does, because they've got the bloodworm in the other hand. So I wanted to do something different, so I did a different unit champion, and you'll notice immediately that I've done a bit of converting and kit bashing to make it happen. Well, primarily it's just kit bashing. So the first thing I did was I introduced the shoulder pads that you get normally only on Blood Sisters, that I completely forgot to put on my Blood Sisters, and I gave them to the crone. I then used a Blood Sister mask instead of the Bloodstalker face to help pick her out immediately from the crowd. And then finally, because I didn't want to use the Bloodworm a second time, so I wasn't just recycling, and because I was on a different torso base, so the arms wouldn't line up the same, I decided to represent the extra melee punch that this model has in the game from the Bloodworm attack. I would give her a melee weapon, and I experimented with a bunch of melee weapons using the spares from my Idoneth Deepkin that I showed you in the last episode, my Namati Thralls and my Akelian Guard. And I settled, after much fiddling around trying to get something to fit in the arm joint, with a lot of trimming and trying to work around this stupid hair because it gets all over the place and in the way, I settled on this spear from the Morsar Guard. And whilst it's not the most inspired choice, I was really hoping for a sword as opposed to the spear. I couldn't get any of the swords to line up and work with the hair in a pose that I liked. But having done it, I do really like the use of the spear, and it sort of plays into that pseudo-Greek aesthetic that all of the elves have got going on. That you've got this Gorgon-like creature who hunts with a spear and a bow, kind of like a mini blood rat Medusa, if you swap the death stare of the blood rat for a bow. I don't know, it just sort of plays into that, and I just really, really like the conversion that I did. It's not the greatest conversion, and I'm sure someone could do better than me using the parts I had to hand, and actual green stuff, because I don't have green stuff, but I think it works, and it helps me pick out the unit champion in a way that it won't matter if I make the unit 10. So if I make it a 10-girl unit, I can still use my other crone, the one with the actual bloodworm, as the unit champion, and this person is just an extra model that looks cool. Doesn't have to be a unit champion, which is probably a good thing. I won't recap the rules here. I discussed that in a previous episode. I'll leave the playlist in the description if you want to go and find it. I think it was the 4th part of this series where I did the Bloodstalkers. So you can find a bit more about how they work. They are, as I said, a bit expensive compared to their battle line spear-wielding variant, but I like them all the same. So there you go, that is the first unit for today, and this was supposed to be the last unit of the project, but after I got through some exams, I had a bit of an impulse buy, and then I painted it in a day. So let's get to that, and one more model before we get to the full showcase. Yeah, you didn't think I was just going to do one box of Idoneth and leave it at that now, did you? So, I bought some more Idoneth, and the model I chose to go for was Lotan, one of the 2 named characters in the Idoneth Battletome, the Warden of the Soul Ledgers. The reason I went for Lotan is because, well, one, it's a really interesting model thematically, in that it's a dude who goes around the battlefields fighting for every enclave imaginable, but he never fights, unless he has to. He's just there making a list of souls and all of that jazz. And secondly, It's a really awesome design. I know this is probably one of the most easily memed models in the Idnet Deepkin range, and trust me, I know that range is easy to meme with the Doom Turtles and the Shark Artillery and all of that, but, well, it's a dude with an octopus who fights for him. It's the Octar, in case you don't know the official name, or as someone in my Discord server so politely called it, the Shanktopus. Yeah, I know, it's a bit of a silly name, but I found it quite funny at the time, so I'm going to use it probably interchangeably with Octar. So, Lotan is a fabulous model to work on. All of the Idneth models that I've worked on in terms of the infantry have been really fun to work on, and this sort of blends between, well, the soul render and also the Namati, because you've got a bit of exposed flesh with the face and the arms, but you've also got the long robes that you get and the heavy armor that you'd get with the soul render. So it was a really nice mix, as well as having a lot of extra details going on, which not all of which you can see. So you've got a big rack of scrolls at the back there. You've got the Octar itself, the scroll in his hand, the scrolls that the Octar's holding, the quill. There's just a lot going on with this model in a really small space. In terms of assembly, it's actually frighteningly easy. But the one word of advice I would say is sub-assemblies are your best friend, obviously. You probably could get away with putting Octar on partway through. I put him on after the wash step, but before I did highlights, because it sort of blocks access to the armor, but it's not the worst. You can do your highlights, I think, but I think you'd struggle with the base coat. I left the quill arm separate, I left the scroll off, just so as I could get to all of those details, and also so I could do some freehand work. I was painting the scroll and I thought this looks a little bit bland, and I saw that there were some tally marks on the canonical model, so I decided to do some of my own, and I even left a small amount of black paint on the end of the quill to sort of imply that he's got a jar of ink. There's a jar of ink in the Octar's hand down here, so I put a little bit of black paint, the same colour as I used for the text, on the end of the quill to show that he is actually writing with the thing. In terms of the model, it's painted the exact same way as all of my Idoneths, so you've got the Stegodon scale green for the robes with the same sort of grey-blue lining as you have for the bellies of the Melisai. You've got the deep blue, more fan armor with the lighter blue edge highlights, although these ones aren't as stark as they are on some of my other models. You've got the flesh, which is painted the same way as all of my other elves, and then you've got the Octar itself. Now, I've started to establish a theme with my Idoneth now, which is that all sea life shall be purple and red. So if you think back to the Achelian Fangmore eels, they are all purple with red fins. The Rakudart, which is the fish that comes with the soul render, is purple with red fins, and then obviously the bony protrusion at the front because it's a swordfish. And Octar, I did the same thing. I went for purple for the main body with red on the lining of the tentacles and the suckers themselves, as well as red eyes, though you probably can't quite see that on the camera here. The one thing I was concerned about when I did that was that it was going to be too dark, but it actually helps to draw the eye back in to Lotan, because the problem with doing the Octar the same way as Lotan's canonical Octar is done is that that's a very bright red, and that's fine if Lotan's wearing shiny silver armor, but my Lotan isn't. He's wearing dark blue armor because it's more fan. So it's a bit of a mix of ideas that you've got to try and bring together, and I wanted to keep the eye drawn firmly to Lotan because, as far as the lore goes at least, he's the fundamental part of the model, even if the community probably thinks it's the Shanktopus over here. But yeah, I love this model. There's so many lovely little details that help to just make this model a joy to work on. And as I said, I painted it in like a day. So I bought it about midday, and it was done by about midnight. So yeah, I got through this model very, very quickly. I was just in the mood for it. And I think if I do keep working on my Idoneth in my own time, which I'm almost sure that I will, I'll find that they're going to be really easy to work on as long as I come at them at a not unreasonable pace so I don't burn myself out. So let's quickly talk about gameplay as to why I bought Lotan gameplay-wise. So Lotan is a model with a 5 wounds and a 6 up save, move 6 bravery 7, but he has a 5 up save after save. For each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound, you negate it on a 5+. So it's kind of like having disgustingly resilient from the Maggot Kid of Nurgle. I don't know why he has a 6-up armor save when he's wearing more armor than most Namati. Yeah, okay, he's wearing a fair bit of robes, but he's still wearing nearly as much armor as the Soul Render. Dude, you shouldn't have a 6-up save, unless this battle tome is wrong, because I think you should have a 4-up save. Surely, with the amount of armor that you're wearing. Anyway, beside the point. In terms of weapons, he's kind of terrible. His Quill has 1 attack, 3s and 5s, no rend damage 1, and the Octar has the Cudgel, which is the little club thing, 1 attack, 4s, 3s, rend 1 damage 2. The Blade has 1 attack, 3s, 4s, 1 rend damage 1, and the remaining 6 arms, the tentacles, have 6 attacks, 4, 4, no rend damage 1, all of those having a 3-inch reach. So the Octar attacks once with each arm, but obviously 2 of them have a weapon, so it all works out. It's kind of a fun little nod to how many arms the octopus has got and all of that business. However, Lotan is there primarily not to fight, not to stay alive. Well, he is there to stay alive, but he's there to make your army work. He's 100 points, and his main ability is the Catalogue of Souls. So all Idoneth Deepkin units, or friendly Idoneth Deepkin units wholly within 12 inches, get +1 bravery, which means that the entire army can really benefit from Lotan being there, because one of the big risks of Achelians in particular is they lose 1 or 2 dudes, and then the rest of them just run. Alapex is a bravery 6. The other Achelian guards, I think, are bravery, 7? No, they're bravery 6 as well. So if anyone's played, what are they called? Gutbusters, you'll understand why having extra bravery is good. And it also means that you're more likely to keep your Namati alive for when they get resurrected by a Soul Render. However, it doesn't stop there. In addition, reroll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Namati units whilst they are wholly within 12 inches of this model. This guy is a Namati buffing machine. And we discussed in the previous episode, and I've got lots of evidence from the games that I've played, that Namati are vicious when they get going. Like, I had 10 Namati thralls in a game, and I almost one-shot killed a Charybdis. I was 1 dice roll off one-shot killing a Charybdis. And I've talked in the previous video about some of the other nasty things that my Namati have done, and I've seen them survive ridiculous amounts of things thanks to their resurrection. So this guy really works in an Namati army, and I'm going to build an Namati army, because I just find Namati more fun to work on, and I can't base Achelians for love nor money, so yeah, I'm going to do that. But he doesn't just benefit them in melee, he just says all hit rolls. So you can also use him with the Namati Reaver Archers in order to get them rerolling ones to hit, and those guys, they're quite dangerous, particularly at close range, because they can fire 3 shots at a time, which is, well, it's impressive for archers to fire 3 shots at a time at short range and still have the longer range option as well. Honestly, Bloodstalkers could really do with taking a lesson from the Namati Reavers, but that's neither here nor there for this discussion. So Lotan is sort of a nice to have in some Idoneth armies, and probably a really critical part of Namati-themed armies. That's not to say you absolutely must take Lotan, because for those 100 points you can get another Soul Render in more fan. That's D3+3 dudes back a turn. So he's not the most must-have model, but he's a very, very, very useful model if you have got 100 points going spare and you don't want or need another Soul Render or magic from a Tidecaster or better prayers or teleportation from a Soul Scryer, all of which are probably better than just buffing some nearby units. But I don't like the Soul Scryer that much in terms of his rules, as useful as it is, and the Tidecaster, if I'm going to do magic, I'm going to do magic properly, and that means an Eidolon of Matlin. So that's Lotan. That is the bonus for the Idoneth Deepkin and for this episode, but that's it. That's all the models. So now I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of time clearing my desk, get the army set up, and then we'll go through everything we've done as part of the 2nd season of An Aelfen Adventure. And here it is, a year's worth of work. The 2nd season of An Aelfen Adventure is all together on one table for probably the first time ever. I apologize for the shaky cam. I would be using my tripod and camera, but the camera on that is just so low quality that I can't really justify doing it and getting a decent visual for this. I will be using the photo of this army for the thumbnail, so if you want to see it a little bit more stable, and it will be on my social media as well, so check the links in the description. So here is the army. My rough maths brings it to about 2,100 points, 2080 I think it is, when you add in the allied contingent. So let's start with the leadership. Marathi, the High Oracle of Cain. She was always going to be the general. I love this model from the moment I saw it. I knew I was going to have it. Then we have her lieutenants, a Bloodrack Medusa, a Hag Queen, and a Slaughter Queen. I should state for the record that this project and this showcase is only the things I painted as part of An Aelfen Adventure Season 2. So there are models missing from this army. Notably, actually, I'm just missing 20 Witch Elves. I'm also missing my Cauldron of Blood, but I wasn't going to repaint that anyway. I kind of like the way that looks, and I'm still proud of that avatar of Cade, as derpy as it kind of looks these days. For the rest of the Daughters of Cain, we have my 10 Witch Elves that I painted this year, 5 with shields, 5 without, just to make up the numbers in my other units. Then we have a giant pile of Melisai, 5 Blood Sisters, the original snakes, and then 10 Blood Stalkers. Probably my favourite unit to work on in the entire army, Morathi aside. I love the snake models. I really, really do. Then we've got 5 Doomfire Warlocks, a bit of a odd purchase on my part, but a really nice unit to work on and a good unit for the battlefield as well. I'll get a lot of use out of these guys. 5 Kirai Heartrenders, because we don't really get shock cavs, we just get flying infantry. These guys provide me with a bit more missile fire, some nice maneuverability for objectives, and also some cheap throwaway points if I need to fill them out. And finally, the second half of Morathi herself, the Shadow Queen. Easily one of the best models in the Age of Sigmar range. And that's not just me saying that. That was voted on, I think, for Model of the Year. I think this model came second or third in the Model of the Year for 2018. It is one of the best models in the entire Warhammer catalogue, according to at least the modern catalogue anyway. It's one of the best, and I cannot stress how much fun it was to work on this model. But of course, we didn't just stay in the shadows. We went under the water as well for an episode or two. So here's the Ideneth Deepkin one more time. We have the Isharan Soul Render, Lotan, who you saw today, 10 Namati Thralls, and my 3 Akelian Ishlayan Guard, who I cannot get onto bases. I'm sorry, I just kind of can't. These guys were also fabulous models to work on. Much like the Daughters of Cain, when the Ideneth were announced, I knew I wanted to get some. So I'm really glad that I enjoyed working on the models, and I will absolutely be expanding these guys in a future year. I don't know if I'll do a project on it, but I'll talk a bit more about future plans in a segment after this, so I can just wrap up my thoughts on the project as a whole. But I have to say, this army, this entire project, and the things that you haven't seen on screen, things that I've worked on for Warhammer 40k, things that I haven't finished, things you might notice just in the periphery of your vision, this project has been a joy to work on. I knew I wanted to come back and do An Aelfen Adventure Season 2 from the moment I finished An Aelfen Adventure Season 1, all the way back now 3 years ago. I knew I was not done with my elves. And I'm so glad that I got to come back and do these guys, and do them properly, where they actually had full battle tomes, full armies that I could do, and a huge diversity in models. We've gone from barely armoured infantry to light cavalry to flying troops to actual heavy cavalry. We've got all sorts of different textures and colours, and the whole army is just a joy. Is it my favourite project that I've ever worked on? Quite possibly. A Town Called Malice, my original Stormcast project last year, was definitely a really fun project to work on, but it wasn't quite the same labour of love as An Aelfen Adventure has been. I'm always going to be an elf player, and I know that there are some of you who are on the other side of the old elf-dwarf divide from fantasy, which is still a thing, by the way, if you like your lore. Forbidden Power proves that Grungni and Teclis do not get on. But this entire project has just been a joy, and I'm so glad that I got to do these elves and get a full elven army up. So as I say, the army that you see here is about 2,100 points. It's not legal, because unless I made the Bloodrat Medusa general, only the Witch Elves are battle line. The Namati are battle line, but they'd be allies, so they don't count. Also, there's more than 500 points of them, so I'd have to cut Lotan or the Soul Render or something anyway. So it's not a legal army, but that's why I have 20 more Witch Elves in the back. And I'm sure that I will be expanding on both of these at some point. I'm only one unit of completing a Temple Nest battalion, so there's an argument there that I could expand that. I've nearly got enough Kirai that I could form. Actually, no, Heartrenders go with Sisters of Slaughter for the Slaughter Troop, and Witch Elves go with Life Takers, so I probably won't be making Cauldron Guard anytime soon. But I will probably finish off a Temple Nest battalion just because it's a fun one.
And the Amati and my Idoneth in general will absolutely be getting an expansion. I knew this project when I started it right at the beginning. I wanted to do more than just my Daughters of Cain. I thought about Idoneth, but I'd also talked about my Order Serpentis. I had an idea for some Dartling Covens. And whilst I won't be doing those urgently, primarily because they don't have battle tomes, and I expect Dartling will get one eventually, I will be probably working a little bit on them as well. And, well, who knows what might be lurking in the shadows. So there will be more elves on this channel, and whilst I don't know if I'll do projects on them, there will be in battle reports. I can almost guarantee you that. And I look forward to just what the future has to hold for the elven race. Will there be an Aelfen Adventure Season 3? Maybe. I'm still holding out hope for a tech list. So if we get a tech list, we might just see an Aelfen Adventure Season 3 as I get round to more elves because I can never have enough elves. But that's not what's coming up next. I don't know what I'll be doing for a project next, but let's have a sit down, have a discussion on how we think this project's gone. You guys can chip in with your thoughts as well, and then we'll talk about the future in terms of hobby, and also the channel in terms of projects and whatnot. So before I sign off and go into my final ramblings, thank you very much. I know this isn't a very viewed series, so for those of you who stuck with the project and followed along in my painting nonsense and my terrible scheduling thanks to breaking my stupid shoulder, thank you very much, all of you, for watching along and supporting the series. As much as it's not what I'm known for, it's always fun to be able to share my hobby, and it motivates me to keep hobbying, knowing that I'm doing it for other people as much as for myself. So right, that'll do. Let's get into my final thoughts on this project, and we'll talk about where we're going in the future.
So here we are, the end of An Aelfen Adventure, the end of another hobby project, eh? I seem to always enjoy getting around to the end of these at the end of the year, and this project for me was kind of a labor of love as well as a developmental test. So my main goal for this project, as much as it was get Daughters of Cain because Daughters of Cain are shiny, was a main exercise in trying to paint flesh. Historically, my weakness when it comes to humanoid factions that are not like AOS Xenos, 40k Xenos, or AOS not humans, elves, and dwarves, is painting the flesh. You'll remember perhaps with my Stormcast Eternals, I went out of my way to do head swaps on any model that did have a bare head because I didn't want to paint the flesh. I didn't feel confident in doing so. So my main goal for this project was to learn how to paint flesh to a better standard, not to a high quality standard, because I realized that my painting is never going to win Golden Demon, but I wanted it to look at least acceptable and presentable. That was the main goal, as well as, of course, to get the new shiny Daughters of Cain, because particularly at the start of the year, Daughters of Cain was still relatively new, exceptionally shiny, and unfortunately became the cheese flavor of the month for several months, which didn't help. Why is it when I pick armies sometimes they just end up being ridiculously OP? I don't like that. I should probably pick a less meta army next time. Oops. But as we've gone through the project, I've decided to try and flex and do as many different techniques as I can to just try and improve my overall skill set of painting. To go from the Stormcast, which was pretty much block colors, a little bit of highlighting, nothing in particular, to try and really refine what I'd already been able to do. And with the Daughters of Cain being so precise in terms of the small areas that you have to work with on some models and having a lot of different contrasting tones going on at once, I think that it was a really good exercise in doing so. And I'm really happy that I did take on this project. Probably my favorite models, believe it or not, are actually, well, obviously Morathi wins, but it's actually been the Melisai. Particularly the Blood Stalkers, the Archers, have been my favourite unit to work on, which is why when I was doing the last unit of Melisai that I had, I decided to go for Stalkers over Sisters, even though Sisters are objectively, at least pre-General's Handbook 2019, the better unit. We'll see what the General's Handbook brings in terms of changes, but they are my favourite unit to work on. I don't know why, but they are probably my favourite unit in the entire project, aside, of course, from Morathi, because Morathi is amazing. Though behind that, I have to give it to the Idoneth and Amati Thralls were fabulous models to work on. And the Namati and the Idneth in particular, whilst it was tying into An Aelfen Adventure, that was a chance for me to try and combine a set of skills that I'd had in the past, where I was doing a lot of edge highlighting like I had with my Tau, and then combine that with the precision and the flesh painting techniques that I'd picked up with my daughters, bring it together to create the Idoneth that you now see. And I'm really pleased with the Idoneth as well. And I do expect that I'll be expanding that army, though I don't know if I'll be doing it as part of a series on camera, because I have a very big plan for a project next year. But yeah, final overall thoughts on this project. Really glad that I did it. Really diverse in terms of what I was actually painting, so I got to try and do a variety of textures and techniques. I'm really just quite happy with how the army turned out, and I can't wait to put it on the table and use it properly with Forbidden Power and the new stuff in the General's Handbook for 2019. And the Idneth has made a really nice baseline, because I always wondered, am I going to do Idneth? Am I going to do Daughters? Turned out I did both. I was always going to end up doing both. And this gives me a nice baseline to build on going forward. But that is sort of the end of now. But what's coming in the future? Well, I have a very specific plan for next year, because next year I've graduated from university. And by the way, when I say next year, I mean next academic year. I think completely in academic years rather than calendar years with these things. I apologize. So my broad plan for the next academic year, since I'm going to be a university graduate at that point and I'll be into my teacher training, which I've qualified for, I'm going to use the time, instead of building a new army or reinforcing my Idoneth, though I will probably still reinforce my Idoneth, I'm not nuts, is to try and create everything that goes alongside an army. So my plan for next year, if I do it, will be a scenery project, because contrast paints make that possible. So, quite recently they released the Shattered Dominion of Sigmar, which is a combination of the Shattered Dominion Age of Sigmar gaming board and the new Forbidden Power terrain. And I love the new Forbidden Power terrain. I've waxed lyrical about it for video after video after video, so I'm going to get some. And I think I'm going to create the free city board that I talked about in a previous video, my Warhammer Fest video. So I'll get the Forbidden Power stuff with the temples and the shrines. I'll get a mausoleum, some realm gates, some walls, maybe a Temple of Skulls for the city outskirts to show where the invading army is coming from or has been before. Maybe some other bits and bobs, like a Gloomtide shipwreck that sort of has come along because there's an Idneth emissary or embassy just because there's a lake nearby. Maybe a shrine to Cain if I decide to get another Cauldron of Blood where there's a small shrine. I've seen some really cool shrines of Cain before. Maybe an observatory, the old, what we used to call Witch Fate Tor, the big observatory tower. I forget, also, no, not Witch Fate Tor, that was the tower. Skullvein Manse, I think, was the observatory. And just create that free city board. That's what I want to do for my project next year. But I'll also be reinforcing my elven armies as we go along. So I've written a 2,000 point Namati themed Morfan Idneth list, and I plan to go along and build that. I've also been working very quietly in the background on a black dragon. I got Malekith, the Witch King, when it was on Made to Order, and I've nearly finished the black dragon. So I'm hoping to get that model done, and then I can bring my Order Serpentis. Maybe as some allies, I might get a Cold One Chariot if I feel, a Drakespawn Chariot if I feel like it. Maybe some more Drakespawn Knights, because I do like those models, and I did them in An Aelfen Adventure Season 1. They were a lot of fun. I'm still holding out for Teclis being the next Elven release, and I expect that to be in the not too distant future, given the hints they've been dropping with the Slaneshi book and with Forbidden Power. So I might get a small army of those. I suspect I probably will. You'll probably know about it very quickly, because the My Thoughts On will involve a lot of happy squeeing, because I know what I'm like. And of course, I'll be doing some other little things on the side, maybe adding a little bit to my Orcs for 40k, adding a little bit to my Tau, adding a bit to my Stormcast. I might decide to get a Taurolon or a Star Drake, so I have a centerpiece monster for that army. Maybe I'll get the Celestant Prime, because I've ummed and ahed about the Celestant Prime. I think I just need to repose him a little bit, and I think I might be able to do the Celestant Prime. I don't know. I haven't quite made my mind up what I want to do. But the scenery project is something that I'm planning to do, and whilst I probably won't document it in a hobby project, I will try and, or not a hobby project like a town called Malice or An Aelfen Adventure, I will try and give you some updates on it as I go along, since contrast paints are going to save my life. So Let me know in the comments what you've thought of this project as a whole, if you've stuck with it throughout the delays and the injuries and the episodes. Do let me know what you thought about it, suggestions for future projects, maybe an idea of what realm I should go for my scenery board. Should I go Akshi to fit my Stormcast? Should I go Olgu to fit with my Elves? Should I go somewhere else entirely, make a Gyron board, and maybe try and lobby one of my friends to take their Sylvaneth of them? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm always interested to see what you have to say. Anyway, I realize this video has gone exceptionally long because I had a lot to talk about. So, without any further ado, that is the end of An Aelfen Adventure Season 2, my Age of Sigmar hobby project. I do hope you have enjoyed it, and I look forward to being back at the paint station very, very soon. Though probably I'll maybe need to get a spray can this time. Thank you very much for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.